Hey, I just wanted to jump in and get something in the interwar years, the period between World War One and World War Two. Uh, During that period in 1920, with the 18th Amendment, we get prohibition, nationwide ban on the purchase of alcohol. Um, Something that actually really is a major turning point there. Alcohol consumption actually goes down quite a bit during Prohibition. Um, uh, you know, People report to work more frequently. There's a less a reduced factor, I guess, in people laying out of work and stuff due to hangovers and stuff like that. And so it actually does weirdly have a little bit of a positive result. But Americans still absolutely like our alcohol and are willing to pay a premium, especially once it's illegal, to obtain a continued supply or to have a continued supply of alcohol. Um, and so one thing that happens is that, getting into economics, there's a huge, tremendous demand for alcohol, especially because now the government says that this is illegal. And so, we've always had a pretty significant taste for alcohol. And, if we're told that we're not allowed to, think back when your parents told you that you weren't allowed to do something, that made it that much more exciting. I did stuff like that frequently. Mom says you're not allowed to do something. Well, guess what? I'm going to go try that out. Um, so, uh, you know, Americans want alcohol. So there's a huge demand for alcohol, but it's technically illegal. Um, Groups that are already partaking in different criminal activities are going to step in to that void and supply that alcohol. And alcohol is going to be more expensive now because it is an illegal product. And so something really significant happens. We've always had mafia organizations, we've always had organized crime. But prior to the 1920s, those organized crime groups really were small time. They would engage in, prostitution operations, gambling. A lot of mafia or organized crime groups would run lotteries. Uh, Sometimes, they would get involved with murder for hire. There were a few that were engaged in even insurance fraud. There was one organization, I believe it was out of Philadelphia, that would kill people's spouses and split the insurance, the life insurance with them. So, these are, illegal activities, but they're kind of small time and they're not really that regular. How often, I know it's going to sound weird, but how often are you going to get hired to kill someone's spouse to split insurance with them? So, that's not a regularly occurring thing. For that group out of Philadelphia, I think they only killed like 7 or 8 people, which is a decent amount of people, but they only killed like 7 or 8 people. And so that's not some kind of income that you can actually count on. Uh, but, uh, you know, Alcohol importation is absolutely uh, an income that you can count on. And so a lot of mafia organizations, organized crime, are going to step into that void and are going to start importing tremendous amounts of alcohol. And there's a plenty of means to get it into the country. I mean, you can cross the border into Mexico. A lot of Texans cross the border into Mexico, purchase tequila and other alcohols, bring them back into the United States. Um, there are quite a few people that cross over into Canada and bring back Canadian whiskey into the United States. If you want to see some really kind of interesting stuff, um, a lot of women are actually used because women are seen as less criminally inclined. And so a lot of women are going to smuggle small amounts of alcohol on their body. And some of them will even wear horseshoes on their shoes so that they look like horses. The footprints through the woods and stuff like that will leave horse footprints instead of people footprints. And so they do them that way. Um, there are other accounts of people going into the Caribbean, going into Cuba, and smuggling rum back into the United States. One group even made so much money. This is incredibly cool. This one organized crime group made so much money that they purchased a former World War I submarine to go down to the Caribbean and smuggle back rum into the United States. And the submarine came with torpedoes, and they removed the explosives charges out of the torpedoes and filled those up with bottles of rum, and the submarine would surface off the coast of I'm thinking it was New York, but I could be wrong, and they would just fire these torpedoes at the coast, and their contacts would come down in the middle of the night and open up the torpedoes and take the rum out or whatever and take off. So this is a tremendously lucrative trade coming in. And so a lot of organized crime really gets to the next level, to a pretty significant profit margin uh, with prohibition. It helps these groups out because the government has provided a steady and extremely lucrative trade that these guys can engage in. Um, on top of that, something else that's interesting, if you've watched, some of the old bootlegging type movies from this period or about this period, um, you might, let's see, The Untouchables with Kevin Costner and some other folks, or any movies about Al Capone. It really makes it look like that organized crime during this period was exceptionally violent throughout the entirety of Prohibition. Kinda. um, Crime, as far as violent crime, did increase. Honestly, it did increase substantially during the early years of Prohibition. That's when you hear about Al Capone and his struggles to solidify Chicago under his authority, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and all those kinds of things. That was in the early years of Prohibition. Once these organized crime groups established dominance. Al Capone's group up in Chicago. Once he establishes dominance up in Chicago and is in control of the Chicago underworld, violence pretty much stops. Uh, Everybody knows that, for Chicago, for example, everybody knows that that Capone is in charge of Chicago, and you're going to get killed if you attempt to challenge him. And so the early years of Prohibition are exceptionally violent. But the latter years of Prohibition, things are very chill. You've got one criminal organization that's in charge of one particular territory, and it would basically be a death wish to challenge those folks. And so that's kind of one of the mythologies that we've kind of accidentally created, that Prohibition, the entire period was exceptionally violent. The first part of it was. The second part, everything is for the most part back to normal. Something else though that does occur. We've kind of been talking about the financial aspects of this. Since alcohol is more or less illegal, there are exceptions, but since most alcohol is more or less illegal in the United States, it's a very valuable commodity. And so if you, as a small time importer, or even just producing your own alcohol, if you can do that and you can stretch your supply, much like we hear about, current drug dealers cutting drugs with other things. If you can stretch your supply, then you can make even more money. And so we hear about the rise also of something called bathtub gin. Uh, People will purchase or produce a certain amount of gin or any other kind of moonshine, and you pour that all in the bathtub, and you put some other stuff in there with it to kind of cut the amount of actual gin, because you're wanting to increase your overall quantity of possible gin. And so you'll water it down, but you need something else, because gin, hard alcohol, has kind of a bite to it. And so there's all kinds of things to mimic that hard, sort of burny flavor that you get with various hard alcohols. Most of these are poisons. Sometimes people will pour turpentine and mix in there, or other kind of industrial grade alcohols and stuff like that that are legit poisonous. Uh, and so you do have some people that are sadly going to purchase, some of that bathtub gin from local bootleggers, and some people will die because of that. And so this is pretty dangerous, but there's all kinds of fun mythology surrounding prohibition that we kind of hear about, and that should be kind of examined a little bit closer. So that's all we'll go for that one, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.